From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm bringing back my guest, Bill Raduchel, who appeared before on the show. But today, as it's end of the year, so what I'm doing is, we're bringing some of my guests to talk about year in review, what happened, and because Bill have also a new book. So, Bill, thank you very much for being back.
Thank you
First
for having
question.
me.
My pleasure, as always. So, tell me, Bill, how this year have been like so far? We are almost done.
Well, exciting. The advantage of being old is you've got history. And, watching the rollout of generative AI is just like going, I remember going to the then CES show, I guess it was Comdex, where Windows for the first time, when Microsoft showed Windows 95. And you saw everybody just, ooh, where it's going. And to me, it was old hat because I'd been at Xerox. And Xerox, of course, really invented that technology. But to most people, it was just mind-blowing. And, that's where we are. I gave a talk to a professional group I belong to, not developers, in February about generative AI and where it's going. And, when they looked at me like I, really had, three heads, I think they all now are overestimating the impact. But we just see the sea change in the world, but every abstraction layer change is a sea change. It changes everything. If you think about it, probably every application in the world gets rewritten in the next 5 years because you got a new abstraction layer. And, the last time we saw this was, 11, 12 years ago with the iPhone and apps and where that goes. And that became the abstraction layer through which most people talk to the technology that runs our lives. So you got a new thing coming, and it's you see the laws of physics matter a lot. NVIDIA and the in making its chips increasingly faster for doing the tasks that AI needs done. Again, massive changes in terms of how the world works. The next 3-4 years are going to be exciting, and they're going to be, winners and losers, and they're not, you're going to probably predict them wrong if you try to do it now.
Yeah, that's fascinating. But are we going too much fast, Bill? You think with this AI, because when I started the show this year, and I compare what we have talked at the beginning of the year. Now we are almost at the end. A lot of things change. Is this something healthy? Because also you've seen major things you talked about, like smartphones before. You saw about the GUI and all this. So how you compare the speed of the change that's happening now?
Well, the speed of change is, you've got, sort of multiple things going on at once, which is going to guarantee high speed. One, we're changing the chips, and we're making the chips better and the chips faster. And so that is going to be a fundamental driver. We're also going to be cheaper. The second thing is the underlying technology, the transformer technology that's being used is getting better, and there are better versions of that. So now you've got, double thing. And then the third, although this is going to end up being quite contentious, is going to be the availability of training materials. Without the success of Google search, you could never have done what OpenAI did, because that made most of the knowledge of the world easily accessible for training. Now, there will be litigation over whether or not you can do that. Japan said yes, right? I understand that the Japanese government have said, yes, it's fair use. We want the gains, and it's benefits society. So no, you can't use copyright as a reason to stop AI from being trained. I'm pretty much a copyright expert in the US, and I don't think the law here is going to sort out that way, but Congress can change that. It's just the law. So is it too fast? Maybe. I'm an economist by training, and economists used to have a concept called absorptive capacity, which is how much change an economy could absorb in a year. Society has an absorptive capacity. We may be exceeding it. And I was talking to a very senior journalist in the United Kingdom a few years ago, going through the changes that were coming. And he stopped me and he looked at me and he said, Bill, this means revolution. So, it's going to be hard. What I don't understand is regulate AI. People say regulate AI. What do they mean? How do you regulate AI? I don't, I have no idea how you regulate AI. I don't have any idea how you regulate software. We don't regulate developers. So it starts there. Anybody can write software. If you go to the ChatGPT website and start building apps on top of it, you don't have to have the skills to go work at DeepMinds. You got to be skilled in your own art. So I have no idea how you regulate it. And I went to a presentation on the executive order that President Biden in the United States is trumpeting, and it's all a great industrial policy, and it matches up with their political goals. But how you make it happen, I don't know. How do you guarantee, a quality of outcome with AI? And in nice words, but nobody knows how to do it. Again, the thing that I think should scare us, to your point, is never have we depended so much on a technology where we routinely talk about the fact that it hallucinates. If I said, look, here's your self-driving car, the only problem is occasionally it hallucinates and drives you to places you haven't thought of, you're never going to get into it. But AI does hallucinate, and it's inherent in the design. It's a huge compression technology, and when it decompresses, sometimes it doesn't have enough information, so it makes it up. We're certainly outrunning people's ability to understand knowledge and where it goes. And the long-term consequence, I think, Mehmet, is that I worry we are turning our children into answer seekers and not problem solvers. And I know one thing for certain about the future of the world. We're going to have problems to solve that are going to be new and novel. And we're not going to be able to go back and look at history to say, well, here's how they solved it. No, that isn't going to be our fortune. And so we need problem solvers. We don't need answer seekers. And AI encourages people to become answer seekers, much as Google search is encouraged. Kids today, they go to YouTube, they go to Google, which is of course also Google, and they look for the answer. And if they can't find it, they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I was just reading a tweet earlier today, and someone was saying that his behavior changed from Googling something first to, I don't know if there is a verb which would be called AIing it or ChatGPTing it. So yeah, so this is the trend.
It's me. Far more than half of the things I used to go to Google to search, I use the app Poe, which gives me access to all the multiple LLMs, and I go there, and that's what I ask, unless it's really current.
Yeah, 100%. In your opinion, Ben, and because you've seen before people who were left behind, people who didn't, jump on this new revolution, let's call it. So, do you think OpenAI is the only company that won this AI revolution, at least for this year, and the others were left behind? Or like it's not fair to say this, and we say like no, there were like some other players there, and probably they next year they will be even maybe better than OpenAI.
Well, yeah, NVIDIA has clearly won with CUDA, right? The lock-in with NVIDIA is
Right.
its software, not its chips. Whether OpenAI will win or not, I think comes down to its app store. Just as in the end, whether iPhone won or Android won came down to the app store. And where will third-party developers put their brains and their money? And that's going to be the attraction. I think OpenAI has not helped itself with stability. I mean, I think people are going to be worried about investing there. And if Google does a great job with Gemini and can catch up on the App Store idea, I mean, they're going to be a competitor, but so will be Meta, so will be Coherent. I mean, the Anthropic. I think now it's a question of where do you get third-party developers? I mean, that again, my history, it was at Sun, and the reason that Sun won so much was because we were able to attract third-party developers, and the third-party developers wanted to develop on Sun, and the programmers wanted to develop on Sun. Okay, and you go hire them and say, well, no, we're going to use Apollo or HP, and the developer goes, no, I don't want to work on that. I want to work on Solaris. And because I see that my job value is higher if I understand Solaris than if I understand HP or Apollo. And so that's going to be, in the end, it's all a talent war. The next decade, the next 2 decades, the next century is all about talent. There isn't enough of it. And it's going to be how do you attract and hold and get these people on board? And that I think is where ChatGPT got an early lead. But, I mean, the cynics would say that Sam Altman figured out that Google was going to beat him. And the only way to win was to go early and, try to preempt Google. And if that was his strategy, it was a good one. I mean, he worked it and he played it well. And he got mind share very early at a very low cost. But that it's developers. I mean, who, if there are no apps on your iPhone, I gave my step granddaughter a new iPad, which I thought was a really nice present. She thought it was useless because when she took it out of the box, it didn't have her game. I mean, people are pretty simple. If there's things there I can use, it's good. If it isn't, it's a nice, expensive something or other, but it's not useful for me. So,
Yeah. Speaking of Sam Altman, Bill, and this is one of the things that we also saw. Is in the age of AI having a CEO being fired, rehired, and all this, what happened behind this story is something which will be kind of the norm in the age where things change very fast.
Well, I mean, he has been rehired. There is a new board. The conflict was apparently with one of the directors who's now gone. Adam D'Angelo is still there as a director. Brett Taylor is well known. Larry Summers is well known. I don't think Larry would lay any claim to being an AI expert. And it's got this odd structure that it's a not-for-profit. but it owns a profit-making subsidiary in which it's taken a lot of money. I mean, come on, I mean, that's all going to make life bizarre. And that instability, I think, will hurt it because, again, you need people to bet their lives, their fortune, their careers on you and start writing apps that use you. And you've got to convince people that that's a good decision. And if people think it is unstable and not guaranteed, they won't. I mean, attracting third-party investment is the key to success for any platform. Otherwise, you're not a platform, you're an app. And none of these people want to be an app. They want to be a platform. That means you have to attract third-party developers. And getting third-party developers on board is, it's sort of like a mass courting system. I mean, it's not, some companies do it well. Some companies never figure it out.
Yeah. But Bill, some of the questions that also always came up this year, again with AI, that where are the others? Like there are some names that people expected them to be very active in the AI, but never heard anything. Like for example, Apple, you know, Google. Of course, they did the counter attack, I would call it, but still, with the demo that they did last week, and people start to talk like they fabricated some of the scenes and it fired back on them. So why we really didn't see any of the okay, Elon Musk, with Grok, but still I didn't test it myself, so I cannot judge about how good or bad is it. But still, we didn't see really a real, I would say, rival to what OpenAI have done. Why do you think is that the case? And if you
Well,
agree, of course, on that.
OpenAI didn't ask permission. It assumed it had the right to do that training, and I think companies that had huge market caps were much more reluctant to take that risk because they're much more attractive targets for litigation. And they may have been waiting to get that sorted out. Apple, Apple has a business model which requires you to have a need for having an awful lot of computing power in your hand. Now, you don't need to do that for a modern smartphone. With 5G technology, you could make that a thin client and have everything running on a server someplace. And the phone could basically last for a decade because it would be a keyboard, a mic, a camera, and a screen. That's not good for Apple's business model. Apple has to figure out reasons why you want to carry information and computing in your hand. And so I don't think they are going to be thinking about AI until they can figure out how to do what Google called Nano, which is how do you build a model which can run on the phone? And then ideally that makes you buy a $2,000 phone instead of a $1,000 phone. So I think that explains Apple, and their ability to be secret is legendary and very cultural and there. Google, I think, I think they rested on their laurels. They invented this stuff. This is all DeepMind. So maybe they just didn't worry about it. And, Sergey Brin has apparently come back and said, yeah, I know I don't have a role, but I have the loads. And so he's playing, a spur, and he's important. I mean, again, one of the themes of the book I wrote is that the laws of physics matter a lot, but so do the human beings that figure out what they mean. And Sergey is certainly one of those people. And Sam Altman is another. So it's not, look, CP/M was the operating system of choice for PCs at one point in time. And people saw it being a huge empire, and it's gone. So it's early. It's early. I mean, I don't know, the claims around Gemini are, I'm sure they're valid, but I also think they're minor. I think they packaged it up really nicely and maybe gave a little bit of false impression and took out some time. But the ability to do what it was doing is impressive. And the multimodal capabilities are how human beings want to interact. So now with Gemini, you could see having a complete conversation with it, whereas with ChatGPT, you can't, because you can't use images, you can't use sound.
Yeah, and I think they integrated somehow with their Bard. So Bard is powered by Gemini now,
Yeah.
and I saw some improvements on there. Now, Bill, regarding the book, because like last time when you were with me, like also you had yeah, your previous book, but now the book title itself, it's exciting, The Bleeding Edge. So tell me a little bit more. What are the themes in the book, and what are like the main topics you have discussed?
Well, I mean, just a good friend of mine was the dean of the business school at Georgetown. And he asked me one day if I would do a course that would teach students basically war stories from my career. And that's what started the thinking that went down this. But I just lived on the bleeding edge of information and technology for decades. I mean, starting in the early 70s, so 50 years, getting on to 60 of living there. And I was in most of the conversations. I mean, along the way, I met the people who we all recognize. I, worked with them at some places. I did deals with them. And I try to take away the lessons. And again, my three basic lessons are: one, the laws of physics matter. And if you're not changing the laws of physics, it's probably not going to be material. Secondly, it takes individuals who understand both how the technology works and what it means to go and drive the change. And third, it still comes down to relationships. And getting things done takes relationships because it takes trust. It gets back to the thing. If you want people to invest in you as opposed to something else, they need to trust you. And I think the biggest weakness of AI is going to be building trust. I don't know how you build trust with an AI. I mean, we have humans, we have hundreds of mechanisms that we've evolved over millions of years on whether or not I can trust you. AI lies with abandon, and a lie is going to, it doesn't twitch when it's lying. Maybe we can figure out a way to guarantee that, but I don't know how. Software is software. So what I try to do is go through my time and use the examples of my life to explore how change happens and what it takes to make it happen. I mean, if you look at the smartphone, the essence of the smartphone is the realization that at a 700 megahertz processor, which just became available with the iPhone 1, voice could just be an application on the device. And if you ever tried to build an application on slower processors, the Nokia N95 was one of the best devices ever made. It's an incredible engineering feat. But every app that was written had to be voice aware. Every app had to be able to understand at any point along the way, I could get a phone call and I get interrupted. And the app had to be voice aware. That meant that people, you had to be really smart to do development. It was really hard. It could easily break. You make voice an application, that's a problem for the operating system. And suddenly you don't have to worry about it. And that's what made Android and iPhone such a dramatic change, is that the apps did not have to be voice aware. And, ChatGPT, Gemini, you don't have to be aware very much. They go and solve so much in the background. So you don't have to worry about it. Well, that lets you innovate. That lets you, that's why you're going to see the pace of innovation go up, because you don't have to do it. I mean, I wrote a piece the other day, and I actually used Claude on Anthropic, but I was able to write it in an hour instead of a week, because the basic research that I needed, it did for me in seconds. And so I mean, the pace of innovation up.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about saving times, when OpenAI, before the event that happened about the firing and rehiring, so they announced the GPT, so you can customize your own GPT. And I tried to create a GPT that does market research. So I give the topic, it goes find out some
Yeah.
numbers for me, and it's mind blowing. I showed to someone who does this as his day-to-day job, and they said, "Wow, like can eliminate the need to me in the future." So it's
Well, the other one, I
absolutely
mean, I think the pay has come down, but there's this new job category I'm going to call it prompt engineer.
right.
And 6 months ago, prompt engineers were getting up to $500,000 a year in salary, because knowing how to use these LLMs is suddenly a new and very valuable skill. Knowing which LLM to use, how to ask the question. Because what's clear is that even with ChatGPT, the way you ask the question affects the answer a lot. A lot.
True, 100%. Now, in the book, I think, Bill, like you mentioned a couple of names that and big names, right? So, uh,
Real.
the question that sometimes people, we discuss it, like why we're not seeing, these kinds of new in the new generation, the same. I don't know if it's the word is right, like the same charisma, if you want, like the same skill sets that we used to see, like in the generation where Steve Jobs, even like not very long time back, like Larry Ellison, So the new generation is not, for some people, is not up to the same level of, like this, someone like, oh, you say like he's like Steve Jobs, he's like, Bill Gates, or he's what like someone else. So is there like in the new generation like lack of, let's call it, this charisma thing, from your opinion?
I mean, the key skill, I mean, if you've watched the movie Oppenheimer, I think the general theme of the book and the movie, is that only somebody with great organizational skills who understood the laws of physics could have done that job. And I don't think Bill Gates is any different. I don't think Steve Jobs is any different. I don't think Eric Schmidt is any different. I don't think Larry Ellison is any different. They're not necessarily the nicest, most friendly, even the most charismatic individuals, but people trusted them because they believed they knew where they were going. And, I certainly see that in Steve Case, who I work for. I mean, Steve was not a great engineer. He wouldn't claim to be. But what he was able to perceive what human beings wanted to do with tech, and then package it up and then keep it there. That was also Steve Jobs. And that was his strengths. I mean, the reason that AOL won was because of Steve Case. And Steve Case was given a demonstration of Windows 95 in 1995. And he looked at it and he said, boy, a lot of people are going to buy PCs this Christmas, and they're going to want to do something with it. They turn it on Christmas Day, and they're not just going to sit there and say, gee, I got this big, expensive consumer of electricity. They're going to want to do something. And the obvious thing they could do was go online. And so he told his team, go out and buy up every inbound modem line. Now, the technology at the time was such that you had to have a number to call to get online. And that number had to exist somewhere on a mainframe computer called a 5ESS. And then that would connect back to AOL. So AOL went out and bought them. I mean, in the fall of 95, they went out and bought up every modem line they could get. So when Christmas came and people did indeed do exactly what Steve thought they were going to do, which is, oh, I got this big new computer and what do I do with it? Well, I guess I'll go online. And AOL had paid to be on the home screen of Windows. They could get a line, they could connect. Competitors, they went out to buy modem lines. There weren't any.
Wow.
And you can't create a modem line overnight. You got to have a computer, a data center, power lines, physical wires. It took months, years to go build up other capacity. And it's that instinct that mattered. Those are the people who changed it. And so they haven't emerged yet. I mean, we've been a very stable time. I mean, my God, it's 10 years basically where technology has not changed that much, right? I mean, I remember when people introduced, Lotus 123 and VisiCalc and spreadsheets. We think of spreadsheets today like we think of toothpicks. But I tell you, when they came out, they weren't the obvious solutions and world hunger, and yet today we couldn't think of living without them. In fact, I had a friend at McGraw-Hill who invested heavily in building a course to teach people how to use spreadsheets. It was a complete commercial failure, and nobody liked it. It was a great course, Lotus 1 to 3. Nobody liked it. They gave it a score about 1.5 out of 5. So he was a smart man. And he went back and he had a 30-minute video made on a VCR. And the course then went back out. And before the course started, you played a 30-minute video that had Tom and Sally competing for a job. Sally used the spreadsheet. Tom did not. Sally got promoted. Tom did not. After that, the ratings went to 4.5 out of 5. Nothing was changed in the course. Nothing. Not one piece of the course was changed. It was just suddenly people go, oh, now I know why I should understand it. And we may be early to figure out whether a next generation of people who see it. I mean, money from AI is going to be made in applying AI. Except for a handful, NVIDIA in particular, that's where the money is going to be, and in the power plants. An enormous amount of electric power. I mean, it's still remarkable that we're talking about that, but the brain uses as much power as a 50-watt light bulb. So we're still way ahead as humans. We don't need to have a new data center. I mean, you see, people looking at how do I build my own nuclear reactor now? Microsoft saying, well, to build these data centers, we really can't afford to buy utility power. We've got to figure out how to build our own nuclear generators. I mean, if that's where we're going to end up, that's going to be an interesting situation. I'm sure they will do it differently than the utilities do it. But the last effort, these small modular reactors, just seems to be about to fail. But I don't know. I mean, you need people who drove change understood both. They understood people and they understood tech. And they could do all three. I mean, the tough job for a founder, I've always said, is they need to have three messages: one to investors, one to employees, and one to customers. And almost anyone can do that. But the problem is they have to be consistent. That's the problem, is that they can't figure out a way to make those three narratives all conform. And the genius of being a founder is you figure out a way to have a narrative that investors, employees, and customers all accept and like.
Yeah, this is great. I would say thought about this messaging thing, and I've seen a lot of people that mix things up, and then they get in trouble. You mentioned about and I think we discussed it last time, but now with the AI that dominated actually all the year, about, and you mentioned even when we started, about who get access to the developers, who get access to the skilled people. Now, are we going to see more I would say, merger between big players and small players, or it will be like, the big players maybe trying to acquire each other's, because at some stage when again back to the story of OpenAI, so people thought that Microsoft would buy OpenAI, but it didn't happen. So where are things moving, do you think? But
You can't, I mean, what are you buying? I mean, the core software GPT is open source, Google. The training data is out there. So you're buying essentially a packaged up amount of money, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions in training data. And you're buying people. Well, none of those are easily packaged up into a transaction. So I don't know what you buy when you buy OpenAI. It's all people. I mean, I think one of the reasons why the blockchain has never taken off is that the number of people in the world who understand how to do it and make it is very small. And it reminds me of the Macintosh. The Mac never got a huge set of apps. And when I was at Xerox, we hired a consultant who came in, and we had dinner one night, and he said, you realize that all these apps were written by one of 50 people. And the genius of the first Mac was the ROM, the read-only memory. But it was brilliant, but it was so complicated. Most individuals couldn't solve it. Windows wasn't nearly as elegant technology, but it was written so that mortals could use it. And the rest is history, right? It never took off. And I think the problem with the blockchain is that it's so complicated, and that you just don't have enough developers out there. AI, I think, has a much bigger pool. AI is closer to Windows than to Mac, and not necessarily in how to do the training, but in how to use it. I think, there are going to be a lot of people who become skilled practitioners. And I think that will matter a lot. But skilled practitioners are, again, you can self-teach yourself a lot of this if you're reasonably smart and have knowledge and where you go. You can't easily teach yourself blockchain. And I always saw that the limit, when somebody told me that there were only 500 people in the world who could do this, that was, in the 90s when I was at Sun, we figured that there were roughly 800 people in the world. We did a survey who could actually work on the kernel of Unix. That was it.
Wow.
500 of them worked for Sun. And why did we win? Well, okay. You don't need any more data. Nobody else really could compete. When we were designing our own microprocessors, we would go out to recruit, come back with a list of 25 people in the world we thought could do the job. 25. I mean, the pools of talent are incredibly narrow. The number of people who could really figure out how to do a transformer. But when you look at these things, a transformer is just an algorithm with a trillion parameters. Now, scale matters. A trillion is, or a billion, or whatever, is a lot. But that's, it's how do you get talent? How do you attract it? How do you keep it? And I don't think that big companies, Bill Joy was, one of the founders of Sun and a brilliant man. And he always had a law that the number of really bright people at an organization was proportional to the log of the number of employees, which of course means that the percentage drops dramatically of size. And, he told me that 1988. That's 45 years ago. I've never seen him wrong. You just can't create enough great jobs that will attract and hold great people in a big company because you get bureaucracy. You deal with Amazon, and Amazon seems like the military. Well, it has to. At 1 million employees, it isn't that it's the military. It's that an organization at a certain size can only run a certain way.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I guess there are a few exceptions. The British running India or the Catholic Church, but they're not trying to implement complex software development.
Yeah. So, Bill, what do you think the trends would be in the next year? Like, of course, AI would be there, but do you think it will steal the, I would say, the seed from any other thing, or are we expecting some breakthroughs in maybe some other technologies, or because the narrative is already written and everything have to be in the space of AI?
Well, it's a good question. Very good question. Yeah. First of all, I think AI is just an evolution of algorithms. They're just very complicated algorithms, and we're already in an algorithmic society. We're run by algorithms. Fortunes are created, rents are created. Algorithms, run everything, and more. I think software has a reckoning coming, whether it's AI or not. I mean, unfortunately, public perception of AI is going to be driven as much by Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible as by the scientific discussion that's going on at the same time, or the OpenAI governance issues. The public is going to see that issue in Mission Impossible, and that's going to affect it. And I think the ability of software to remain beyond the purview of government is going to come into question. I think it's already. I mean, you see all these things regulate AI. As again, I think they're vacuous because they have no idea what they're saying. How? And then they look at you and go, well, you have to regulate it. What does that mean? Well, you appoint a commission. What does the commission do? Oh, I haven't gotten to that. Let's just appoint a commission. And so I think that the future of software is going to be one that is going to have a much greater intrusion of government into how we do this stuff. Now, we live with that. If you're a civil engineer and you're designing a bridge, guess what? You have to have a certification. You can't just say, oh, I'm a civil engineer and I've designed a bridge. Let's go put people on it. That's not legal. If you're a civil engineer, you've got to have a license to be a civil engineer. And so I think that you're going to see inevitably that developers are going to have to get licensed. Not everybody is going to have to be licensed, but somebody who's licensed is going to have to take accountability. And so figuring out how to put accountability into software is going to become the issue. I mean, you see that issue in the misinformation, disinformation debate in the modern democracies, where people are saying, well, why did the algorithm do that? So now you're going to say that whatever algorithm is doing that, some human being has to take accountability for its actions. And to have that, you've got to have licensing and other mechanisms to come in place. But I think you're going to see, and this is going to be a pain. If you're a CTO, you're going to hate this. It's going to make your life miserable because you already got enough issues. But okay, now I want to certify this. Oh, that's great. Okay. Oh, by the way, we're totally dependent on Kafka. Okay. Now, how do I, as the deploying engineer, certify Kafka? Well, how does open source work in a world of accountability? Because open source is a world that thrives on no accountability.
Yeah. So it's very complicated.
Very.
Yeah. Like, time will show us, I think, Bill, what will happen. Again, like last time, you told us great stories. We we talked about the AI. Just one thing about, it's like, it's a meme I saw the other day about regulation. So they saw whoever, will be regulate AI will be left behind. And they were talking about Europe because I think the EU, they decided to heavily, regulate AI. And no one actually knows what they mean by that. Like,
well, it's true. I mean, Japan just said it's open season on copyrighted content because they want to lead in AI. And they figure that, I mean, that's a legal thing you can do. I mean, if you want to slow down AI and that is your policy goal, it's very simple. Put an excise tax on GPUs.
Yeah.
Tax GPUs. Okay, every GPU has 50% excise tax. Okay, AI slowed. It's done. In the United States, at least, and the EU, a handful of other countries, but you can put an excise tax on GPUs and you would slow AI. I mean, tax electric power going to data centers. That'll slow AI. I mean, we can slow AI if we want to, but nobody really wants to. It's just a marketing slogan. And since AI is just an algorithm, at what point does building an algorithm become AI? At 1 billion parameters, maybe. But there's so much nonsense in the public debate of people who know nothing talking about something about which they know nothing, but thinking they are absolute experts because they can turn on their iPhone.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Bill. Like sometimes we see this nonsense thing at some stage, like, yeah, it's scary. We don't know how it's going to do, but they don't know even what they talk about. So I agree with you on this. Bill, really, I enjoyed again the conversation today. I will put the link for the book, The Bleeding Edge, so people, they can go and, they can get it. And it's really, great topic discussed there. I like, the preface that I saw. It's amazing. And thank you again for being a guest for second time. This is
no problem. I love it. Enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, this is now, it's because end of the year, so we're bringing guests again to talk about what we've seen this year and expectations.
Happy to do an update anytime.
We will do it. We will. It will be always nice to have you on the show, Bill. So thank you very much for the time, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Hit that subscribe button. Share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.